Hi friends! Today's video is on the top 10 rules for the beginning reader. I know there are a lot of rules in English, and a lot of us just think that English isn't really governed by rules, or that the rules are so complicated that no one can really understand them. But I think after this video you might hopefully feel differently. The important rules that you can really apply as a beginning reader are actually not that complicated, and once you understand them as an adult or educator, they're super easy to teach to kids. There's a special surprise at the end of this video, so you're definitely going to want to watch the whole thing. Alright, so this is where I'm getting these. They are on the rule tracker. So this is the mastery tracker for phonograms. I just print them front to back, so everything you need to know about teaching reading is right here on one piece of paper. So these are the rules, and we're just going to go through them, and I'm going to actually show you how I teach them to kids, okay? Because sometimes when you just say the rule, it sounds really boring and hard to apply, but I teach everything in story, so it's actually really easy to apply for the kids, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so on this tracker, I have listed these according to the step, if you're going according to the mastery tracker, the step that you should teach these rules with, okay? So that's what the step number means, and I'll just go through them. So the first one is that S may sound like Z after a voiced sound. That sounds complicated, but all a voiced sound is a sound that uses your vocal folds. So, for example, if you say the P sound, P is an unvoiced sound, or a whisper sound. Your voice box isn't on. But if you change the sound to B, you should feel some vibration down here. And you can have the kids do that, put their hand right on their throat, and that's really, we call it the bumblebees in their throat, or whatever you want to call it, the vibrations in their throat. So the rule is that S may sound like Z. Z is a voiced sound. Z, z, z. S is an unvoiced sound. S, s, s. You don't feel anything on an S. So S sounds like Z after a voiced sound. So for example, in the word frogs, that S is going to sound like a Z. And the reason for that is that the G, the last sound before the S, is voiced. G, g, g. And so since your voice box is already on, it's easy just to keep it on and say the last sound, which turns the S, s into a Z. Z, z. Frog, z. So it sounds like a Z. So when I teach S, I just mention that sometimes S says Z, and then when you get to step, I think it's on 7, we really go into it and make sure they understand that. But I always mention it right off when I teach S. Because a lot of the words that it applies to, like is and his, are really common, easy words that the beginning reader will see very soon, so they need to know that. Let's see. Rule number 2 is that Q is always followed by U. That's easy. I just explained that Q is kind of shy, and he always needs his best friend, U, to go with him everywhere he goes. U is brave, and it can go by itself. It doesn't need a Q, but when Q is there, you'll always see U right after it. That's rule number 2. Rule number 3 is that CK is usually used at the end of syllables when preceded by a vowel that says its short sound. That sounds really complicated, but all it means is that if you're going to spell the word kick, hear the I in there that's a short sound, ick. The K sound after that short vowel is going to be spelled with a CK. It's actually more of a spelling rule, because when you're reading it, it's really obvious that both the C and the K are going to make their normal sounds. So that doesn't really trip kids up. But that's rule number 3. Okay, rule number 4 is that the pattern, vowel, consonant, and then an E, will change the vowel to a long sound. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate how I teach this to kids. Okay, so this over here, you can see better. Okay, so we have consonants and vowels, and something that's important to do right off when you're doing step 2 and you're going through the consonants and short vowels, I actually just always mention that sometimes the vowels can also say their long sound, and that's when they just say their name. You're not teaching them a new sound. They're already learning the names and the sounds, so just say sometimes vowels can say their names. And there's a really cute vowel song that I can teach you in a different video. But, okay, so this is called the magic E rule. And all it is that when you have a consonant, this pattern, well, I can't really write this way. Let's see if I put it like this. Okay. So if I have a consonant like N, and then a vowel like O, This word is not. Not. The O is a short vowel. But I'm going to take the E on the end, and if an E is after this pattern, consonant, vowel, consonant, it takes a while for them to train them to see this, but you can just point it out 100 times and they'll get it. Just kidding. Won't take that long. Then the E jumps over, makes the O say O. Okay, that's the little rhyme we say. And then the E is used up all its magic, making the O say O, that you can't, it's all out of energy, so when you read the word, n-oat, you don't say E, you don't say note-e or note-e, because the E is so tired. He has used up all his energy, making that O say O, and you never say a silent E at the end of a word. You can also use like a little wand that you write E on if you want, and then they can like put the word up there. And if you go to the principle that is, let's see, what's it called? I think it's just called word lists on thewaymothersare.com. Whenever I teach the long vowels, so for each vowel there's a list where I show that the E changes the vowel. So there'll be a whole list of words that make sense. Short vowel, and then add the E, it changes the meaning of the word. And that's a really effective way to teach this. So they see that just adding this not only changes the sound of the word, but it totally changes the meaning. Okay, so that's how you teach that. I call it the magic E rule. That's rule number 4. Rule number 5 is that every syllable needs a vowel. And in the little vowel song I will teach you, it mentions that. So that's an important rule. And this is why in words like table and pickle, that's why they have an E on the end. Because without that, table, that last syllable would only have a B and an L, and there's no vowel in there. So they throw the E on the end to make that rule come true. And it doesn't change the sound of the word. You don't have to say anything or do anything different. You just have to know that that's why it's there. Also kind of a spelling thing. So let's see, rule number 6 is that English words do not end in U, V, J, or I. And I know you're going to think of a handful of words that do, but that's because they're not really English words. They're like French words or Latin words or something. They're not true English words. So the way we deal with that is that we add a silent E to the end of those words. And that's why words like blue, B-L-U-E, has an E on the end, because English words don't end in U, so you have to put an E on the end. Same thing with give. The E typically would jump over the V, make the I say I, so the word would be give, but that's not, this E isn't magic, essentially. It is just there so that V isn't the last letter in the sound, letter in the word. Same thing with have, so that's why they don't, it's not a magic either. So that is rule number 6. English words do not end in U, V, J, or I. Okay, so rule number 7 is called the open syllable rule. And this is a really important rule. This totally blew my mind. I went my whole life without knowing this rule because no one ever bothered to teach me. Not that I'm bitter or anything. I forgive you, first grade teachers. Okay, so essentially the open syllable rule is that when a vowel is the last sound in a syllable, it will say its name. So let's demonstrate this. And the way that I do this is I tell this little story about how an evil monster or witch or whatever bad guy your kid is into came and captured all the vowels and turned all of the consonants into its soldiers, or its guards. So it trapped all of the vowels in between consonants. So for example, we had a word like, we had a consonant, and then, can you see that? Is it big enough? I. And then another consonant. Ooh. So if we have the word hit, okay? Sorry, this is a really weird angle to write at. That doesn't look great. Okay, so this vowel is trapped in between two consonants. They're guarding it, and it's sad, so he says his sound. He says, it. So, it. Okay, so it sends its sound when it's in between two consonants. This is called a closed syllable. And when this guard gets lazy, he leaves, and the syllable becomes open so he can run away, and he's happy, and he says, I. So that now the word is I. This also explains why when you see just an I or just an A, why you say I and A, because these are the last, the vowel is the last because it's the only sound in the syllable. This works really good with words like, we can do note again, not. And there's a whole list of these on the way mothers are. So there's the N and the O and the T. Oopsies. So this O is trapped, so he's sad and he cries or not. Not. You could do hot too, would work just as well. And then this guy gets lazy. It's always this consonant on this side that gets lazy because we read this way. So this syllable becomes open and he says, oh, because he's happy, he says, oh, I can get away. So now the word is no, no. All right. So that's the open syllable rule. This also is seen in words like navy and music. If you clap out navy, navy. Hear how the A is the last sound in that first syllable? That's why it says its name. Music. So the U in that first syllable is open. It's the last sound in that syllable, so it's going to say its name. And that's a little tricky when you're reading because it will look like it's trapped by consonants. And so it's kind of a rule that you learn through experience, and it also really just helps with spelling. So that's a great one, but it really, really helps with all of those short little words that early readers are exposed to super early on, like no and go and he and I and a, all of those. It explains all of those. So it's really easy to just teach that rule instead of teaching 20 sight words, right? So that is rule number 7. Rule number 8 is that I and O may say their long sounds when followed by 2 consonants. And this was another rule that I had totally never heard of before I started studying all of this a few years ago. And I'd say this rule is like 75% good, you know. There are lots of exceptions, like everyone says, but this, just having that rule really eliminates a lot of exceptions. So essentially what this rule is saying is that in words like kind, K, I, N, D. There's no real reason here. There's no magic E that's not an open syllable. There's no reason that the I should be I, kind, but it's because there's 2 consonants. That's another way. The same thing with old, O-L-D. L-D is 2 consonants, so it makes the O say O. And there's lots of exceptions to that. You'll find them, I'm sure, and maybe some of you will email me about them, but I know that they exist. Don't worry, you don't have to tell me. But that is rule number 8. Okay, rule number 9 is all about why. So I kind of cheated here and kind of squeezed 3 things about why into one rule, but it's all about how why works. So essentially Y says its consonant sound, y, when it is at the beginning of a syllable, y, like yes. Or it can also say I when it's at the end of a 1-syllable word. Technically, it's when it's in a stressed syllable. So in all 1-syllable words, that syllable would be stressed, like fly and buy and sky. Can you hear how that Y says the long I sound? So I just tell the kids, if it's a short word, try the Y on the end, try the I sound, sky, buy, fly. If it is a 2-syllable word or just it looks longer to the kids, then it's going to say E, like party, puppy, monkey. Actually, that's an EY. Bad example, but party and puppy are good. And then Y can also say the short I sound, I, when it's in between 2 consonants. So like in gym, the Y is in between a G and an M. They're both consonants, and you hear the short I sound. J, I, M. Same thing in Egypt. So that's how Y works. Consonant ones at the beginning of syllables, long I sound at the end of short words, long E sound at the beginning of longer words, and a short I sound in between 2 consonants. But those are really concrete rules. They really hold up. So they might sound complicated, but kids don't think they're complicated, actually. They're very concrete. Okay, rule number 10, here we are. Any vowel can say if it is unstressed. And that's really tricky because when you're sounding out a word like umbrella, there's an at the beginning that's a U, and then an at the end that's an A. But the reason that the A at the end is because it's just an unstressed syllable. Same thing in America. The stress falls on the mer In America, America's a great example because it actually has two A's that say and that's called the schwa sound, and is really common mostly because English speakers are very lazy, and in previous iterations of the English language, we were more proper and said all the sounds right. But that is rule number 10. And the big surprise at the end of this video is that there are actually 11 rules. And the last one is that G and C say their soft sounds when followed by E, I, or Y, like city, scent, spicy, gentle, giraffe, gym. And those are all taught in level step 7 anyways, so they get addressed, but I just teach that as a rule as well. So technically 11 top rules, but top 10 sounds so much better, don't you think?